Marcus left me when I was terminally ill, saying my condition was too hard for him to handle. While I was going to chemotherapy alone, he was on vacation with his new girlfriend. What he found out 6 months later turned his life into hell. You guys, I'm literally shaking as I write this because what I'm about to tell you is the most insane thing that's ever happened to me. My hands can barely stay steady on the keyboard. But here's the thing. What Marcus discovered 6 months later wasn't just shocking. It was life-destroying. And what happened 3 days after he found out? I still can't believe I had the strength to pull it off. But I can't tell you the biggest bombshell yet, because what happened exactly 1 week after our final confrontation will make you question everything you think you know about karma, justice, and how the universe really works. Let me start from the beginning, because this story is absolutely wild. Marcus and I had been together for 2.5 years when everything changed. We met through a dating app, had this amazing connection, and honestly, I thought he was the one. He was charming, supportive, always making me laugh. We moved in together after 8 months, adopted a cat named Whiskers, and talked about marriage constantly. Marcus worked in marketing for this tech startup, and I was a graphic designer at a small agency. We had this cute little routine. Sunday morning farmers markets, Netflix marathons, cooking dinner together every night. It felt perfect, you know? Like we were building something real. But then, I started feeling sick. It began with this constant fatigue that wouldn't go away no matter how much I slept. Then came the weird bruises that appeared for no reason. I'd find them on my arms, my legs, places I definitely hadn't bumped into anything. Marcus kept saying I was probably just stressed from work, that I needed to take better care of myself. When I started losing weight without trying, that's when I got scared. I went from 130 pounds to 115 in just 6 weeks. My clothes were hanging off me, and people at work kept asking if I was okay. Marcus said I looked great, that maybe I just found my natural weight. But here's what I didn't know then. And this connects to why Marcus's life became a living nightmare 6 months later. There was something about my condition that no one, not even the doctors, understood at first. Something that would change everything about this story in ways I never could have imagined. After weeks of feeling terrible, I finally went to see my doctor. She ran some blood tests, and the results were concerning enough that she referred me to a specialist immediately. That's when the real nightmare began. The hematologist was this serious older man who didn't waste time with small talk. When he sat down across from me in his office, I could tell from his expression that whatever he was about to say was going to change my life forever. He told me I had acute leukemia, stage 3. The words hit me like a truck. He explained that I would need immediate treatment, aggressive chemotherapy, possible bone marrow transplant, the whole terrifying package. Without treatment, I had maybe 6 months to live. With treatment, my chances were 50-50. I sat there in complete shock, trying to process what he was telling me. 6 months to live. 50-50 odds. Chemotherapy. It felt like I was in someone else's life, like this couldn't possibly be happening to me. When I got home, Marcus was on the couch playing video games. I sat down next to him and told him everything the doctor had said. His face went completely white, and for a moment, I thought he might cry. But then Marcus said something that should have been my first warning sign. He asked how much the treatment was going to cost and whether my insurance would cover everything. Not, "Are you okay? Or we'll get through this together." His first concern was money. The next few weeks were a blur of more tests, consultations with oncologists, and preparing for chemotherapy. Marcus seemed supportive at first. He came to a few doctor appointments, helped me research treatment options, even held my hair when I threw up from the pre-chemo medications. But I started noticing changes in his behavior. Marcus would get this look on his face when he thought I wasn't watching. This expression of barely contained panic mixed with frustration. He started working late more often, claiming his company was going through a busy period. He'd come home exhausted and distant, barely wanting to talk about my treatment or how I was feeling. 3 weeks before my first chemo session, Marcus sat me down for what he called a serious conversation. I thought he was going to propose or tell me he'd taken time off work to help with my treatment. Instead, he completely blindsided me. Marcus told me that my diagnosis had made him realize he wasn't ready for this kind of commitment. He said watching me go through treatment would be too emotionally difficult for him to handle. He claimed he'd been having panic attacks, thinking about losing me, and that he needed to protect his own mental health. But here's the part that destroyed me. Marcus said he thought it would be better for both of us if he moved out before treatment started. He didn't want to be a burden on my recovery, and he felt like his stress was making my situation worse. I sat there listening to this man, the man I thought I was going to marry, essentially tell me that my cancer was too inconvenient for him to deal with. I asked him if he was seriously breaking up with me because I had cancer, and Marcus got defensive. He said it wasn't that simple, that he was trying to do what was best for everyone. When I started crying and begging him not to leave me during the scariest time of my life, Marcus got angry. He said I was being manipulative and using my illness to guilt trip him. He actually used the words emotional blackmail. That's when I knew the man I loved was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. Marcus moved out 2 days later. He packed his stuff while I was at work, left his key on the kitchen counter, and took half our shared furniture. The only thing he left behind was whiskers, saying he couldn't handle pet responsibility on top of everything else. Starting chemotherapy alone was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. I sat in that treatment center surrounded by other cancer patients, most of whom had family members or friends with them, and I felt completely abandoned. But here's what made it worse. And this connects to the massive secret that would destroy Marcus 6 months later. While I was getting my first round of chemo, Marcus was posting photos on social media of him at some resort in Cancun with a woman I'd never seen before. A woman he'd apparently been seeing for months before my diagnosis. But I'm not ready to tell you about her yet, because what I discovered about their relationship is connected to something so much bigger and more twisted than just basic cheating. Something that involves other women, lies that go back years, and a plan that was so calculated it made my blood run cold. The chemo was brutal. I lost all my hair within 3 weeks, dropped another 15 pounds, and spent most days either vomiting or sleeping. My mom came to stay with me for a while, which helped, but she had to go back to work eventually. Going through treatment alone taught me things about myself I never knew. I was stronger than I thought, braver than I'd ever imagined, and capable of surviving things that would have broken the person I used to be. Meanwhile, Marcus's social media was a constant stream of photos with his new girlfriend. Let's call her Jessica. Beach vacations, fancy dinners, concert tickets. It was like watching someone celebrate my absence from their life. 4 months into treatment, I was responding well to chemo. My oncologist was cautiously optimistic, saying my blood work was showing significant improvement. The 50-50 odds were starting to look more like 70-30 in my favor. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I hired a private investigator. I know that sounds dramatic, but I needed to understand who Marcus really was. I needed to know if our entire relationship had been a lie, if he'd been planning to leave me even before I got sick. I needed closure, but I also needed ammunition. What the PI discovered over the next month was so much worse than I could have imagined. But I can't tell you everything yet, because what we found connects to something that happened just last week that will blow your mind. Here's what I can tell you. Marcus hadn't just been cheating on me with Jessica. He'd been running an elaborate scam that involved multiple women, false identities, and financial fraud. My cancer diagnosis hadn't caused him to leave. It had just accelerated a plan he'd already put in motion. But that's not even the darkest part of what we discovered. There's something else, something so twisted that when I found out, I actually threw up. Something that made me realize I wasn't just Marcus's ex-girlfriend. I was his victim in ways I never could have imagined. First update. You guys have been messaging me nonstop, asking what the PI found. And honestly, I'm still processing it myself. But before I tell you about Marcus's crimes, I need to share something that happened during my treatment that changes everything about this story. Remember how I mentioned that there was something about my condition that even the doctors didn't understand at first? Here's the bombshell. My cancer wasn't natural. It was caused by slow poisoning. 3 months into chemo, my new doctor noticed something strange in my blood work. There were traces of chemicals that shouldn't have been there, substances that can cause the exact type of leukemia I'd developed. When they tested my hair samples, they found a pattern of exposure going back almost a year. Someone had been deliberately poisoning me. And there was only one person who had consistent access to my food and drinks during that time period. Marcus. But here's what's even more insane. The PI discovered that I wasn't his first victim. Marcus had a pattern of targeting women, slowly poisoning them, then abandoning them when they got sick. He'd done this to at least 3 other women over the past 5 years. One of them died. Her name was Sarah, and she was only 26 years old. Her family thought she'd just been unlucky, that she'd developed a rare form of brain cancer out of nowhere. They never suspected that her boyfriend, Marcus, had been systematically murdering her. When I found out about Sarah, I knew I had to stop him. Not just for me, not just for revenge, but to prevent him from killing Jessica or whoever came after her. The evidence was overwhelming. The PI had documentation of Marcus researching poisons online, purchasing chemicals through fake accounts, even keeping a journal where he detailed his experiments on his victims. He was a serial killer who used slow poisoning to avoid detection. But Marcus had no idea we'd figured it out. He thought I was just another cancer patient he'd successfully escaped from. He had no clue that I was building a case that would destroy his life completely. That's when I decided to play dead. Second update. I know that sounds insane, but hear me out. My oncologist was in on the plan. When I told him what we'd discovered, he was horrified and agreed to help. We faked my death. It wasn't hard to do. I was already weak from chemo, already looked like someone who was losing the battle with cancer. My doctor created false medical records showing that my condition had suddenly worsened, that the treatment had failed, and that I died from complications. We held a funeral. My family was in on it. My mom, my sister, even my cousin who worked in the funeral industry helped us stage everything. The obituary ran in the local paper. My social media accounts went dark. As far as the world knew, Marcus had successfully gotten rid of me. Marcus didn't even come to the funeral. According to my sister, who kept an eye on his social media, he posted a generic rip message and then went on another vacation with Jessica 2 days later. While Marcus thought he was free to continue his killing spree, I was working with the FBI to build an airtight case against him. The evidence we had was massive. Financial records, purchase histories, testimonies from other victims' families, even video footage of Marcus tampering with my food. But we needed him to make a mistake. We needed him to try to poison Jessica so we could catch him in the act. So I came back from the dead. 6 months after my funeral, I walked into the restaurant where Marcus was having dinner with Jessica. I looked healthier than I had in years. The poisoning had stopped, the chemo had worked, and I'd gained back all the weight I'd lost. I was literally glowing with health and fury. The look on Marcus's face when he saw me was absolutely priceless. Pure terror mixed with confusion. Jessica had no idea who I was, but Marcus looked like he'd seen an actual ghost. I walked over to their table, smiled at Jessica, and said, "Hi, I'm Marcus's dead ex-girlfriend. We need to talk." What happened next was the most satisfying moment of my entire life. Final update. You guys, I'm getting chills just thinking about Marcus's reaction when I appeared at his table. The man literally started hyperventilating. Jessica was confused, asking Marcus who I was and why he looked like he was about to pass out. I sat down at their table without being invited and calmly explained to Jessica that Marcus had tried to murder me. I told her about the poisoning, about Sarah and the other victims, about the evidence we'd gathered. I even played her a recording of Marcus talking about his experiments that the FBI had obtained through a wiretap. Jessica went completely white. She looked at Marcus, who was just sitting there in shock, unable to speak. Then she asked me the question that broke my heart. Have I been getting sick lately? Jessica had been experiencing fatigue, headaches, and nausea for the past few months. Marcus had been telling her it was probably stress from her new job. But now, hearing about his pattern, she realized she was showing the early signs of poisoning. That's when the FBI agents walked in. We'd coordinated the whole thing. While I was confronting Marcus and Jessica, agents were searching his apartment and finding his current stash of poisons, his research materials, and his journal documenting Jessica's treatment. Marcus was arrested on the spot. The charges were massive: multiple counts of attempted murder, 1 count of actual murder for Sarah's death, fraud, identity theft, and about a dozen other felonies. But here's the part that still gives me satisfaction 6 months later. Marcus's life didn't just fall apart legally. The story went viral. Videos of his arrest were all over social media. His family disowned him. His employer fired him immediately and cooperated with the investigation. Every woman he'd ever dated came forward with their own stories of mysterious illnesses. Jessica got medical treatment immediately and recovered fully. She also became one of my closest friends through this whole process. We bonded over the shared trauma of loving someone who was literally trying to kill us. Marcus is currently serving 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. The judge said it was one of the most calculated and evil cases he'd ever seen. Marcus's defense tried to claim he was mentally ill, but the evidence showed years of careful planning and research. But this wasn't insanity. It was pure evil. Sarah's family finally got justice. They were able to have her body exhumed and tested, confirming that she'd been poisoned. Marcus was charged with her murder and received an additional life sentence. As for me, my cancer is completely gone. The doctors say that once the poisoning stopped and the chemo finished its work, my body was able to heal itself completely. I'm healthier now than I was before I met Marcus. I've also become an advocate for other poisoning victims. You'd be shocked how many cases there are of domestic partners slowly killing their significant others. It's more common than people think. And it's almost impossible to detect, unless you know what to look for. The fake death thing was extreme, but it worked. Marcus got comfortable, got sloppy, and gave us the evidence we needed to put him away forever. Sometimes fighting monsters requires you to be a little monstrous yourself. People ask me if I feel guilty about the elaborate plan, about faking my death and traumatizing my family. The answer is no. Marcus was a serial killer who was planning to murder Jessica just like he'd murdered Sarah and tried to murder me. Whatever trauma my plan caused was nothing compared to the lives we saved. Jessica and I both have PTSD from the experience, but we're getting therapy and supporting each other. She's actually dating someone new now. A wonderful guy who brings her flowers and makes her soup when she's sick instead of poison. As for dating again myself, I'm taking it slow. It's hard to trust people when someone you love tried to murder you. But my therapist says that's normal, and I'm working on it. The last I heard about Marcus, he's in solitary confinement for his own protection. Apparently, even hardened criminals don't like men who poison women. Prison justice is real, and Marcus is learning that the hard way. Sometimes karma needs a little help. Sometimes justice requires you to fake your own death and come back as a ghost to haunt the person who tried to kill you. Sometimes the best revenge is just making sure a monster can never hurt anyone again. 6 months ago, I was dying alone in a hospital room while my boyfriend celebrated with his new victim. Today, he's in prison for life, and I'm alive, healthy, and stronger than I've ever been. If that's not justice, I don't know what is. Thanks for following this absolutely insane journey, you guys. To anyone who's been through domestic abuse or feels like something might be wrong with their relationship, trust your instincts, document everything, and remember that you deserve so much better than someone who would hurt you. And hey, if you enjoyed this story of ultimate justice served cold, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Viral Family Tales for more incredible true stories. We post new content every day, so hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Drop a comment below if you think Marcus got what he deserved, or if you have your own story of surviving something impossible. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is just surviving and thriving.